let's get started. And like I said, I hope I don't want to really talk for a really long time. So my name is Antia. I'm at the University of Washington, as you see, and I wanted to talk about this fellowship program that I developed and have run for the first time last year, and we're actually in the midst of running it this year. We're selecting our students for the program this year. So just a little bit about me. I guess I'm a little bit new to this field of social entrepreneurship. My background is really as a scientist in the lab. Initially studied physics and did bioengineering in my PhD. And I did research then in a malaria lab, creating these devices that could help study malaria pathogenesis. And then I worked at the Wellcome Trust, which is a foundation in London in the UK for several years. And it was there that I really started getting interested in this space of how do you get early stage research and actually get it out into the real world so that it can benefit people and societies. And I was mostly working then with biomedical products like early stage drugs, devices, therapeutics, diagnostics. And then at the University of Washington, I've been working with the Population Health Initiative, which sits within the office of the president and the provost. And that's really looking at a much broader view of health as being more than just medicine in terms of treating diseases and curing illnesses. And you know, that's something that I've come to learn a lot about, and I think many of you will probably be familiar with as well, that just health challenges are not just about curing diseases. And there's so much work now showing the effect of many, many other factors on health. You know, you can see that in news headlines every day. I've just put some up here. Something that's a massive health crisis now in the US is the opioid epidemic. But that's, again, it's not just to do with health. There's some work showing that free trade policies contributed to that. Socioeconomic status is incredibly important in determining health outcomes. Education affects health. Income affects health. And then, you know, there's a lot of people who are seeing even something like homelessness as a healthcare issue, right? Housing is so tied to your health that you need to think about healthcare as encompassing an issue like homelessness as well. And so the Population Health Initiative, where I sit, is really the university's attempt to try and make researchers at universities think about health as this broad concept that encompasses these intersecting and overlapping factors, and not just look at health as the elimination of diseases. And so, you know, you see some of these factors up on the screen here, and I mentioned them earlier. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's so many factors that affect health. And where entrepreneurship comes in, what I'm really interested in is thinking about how entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship can really improve population health in the university setting. And what can we do to grow an ecosystem that will help entrepreneurship thrive at the university? And I have to say, at the University of Washington is a very research intensive, it's a large public university. There's tons of research going on here. And there is a lot of entrepreneurship going on as well. But I would say that's been in the more, looking at more technologies that can be commercialized. And so what I've been trying to do is really bring some of the social entrepreneurship to looking at taking entrepreneurship principles and understanding how those can be used for research that has societal impact as well to make that sustainable. So that's really the question, right? So how can social entrepreneurship can help university research that has a societal impact to be sustainable and to kind of continue beyond the lifetime of a research project? Because that's something I heard a lot from researchers. You know, they develop something, it's an innovation, you can pilot test it, it has great impact, and then the research funding dies out, and what next? What happens next? So just examples of the types of research that I'm talking about that could benefit from social entrepreneurship. So I've listed a couple of projects up here. So one of them is a social robot that is being implemented, and the researchers doing this in schools to reduce stress in teens. And so the question here is not just about how do you develop something like this that's useful and that works, which is something that the research team is great at doing, but how do you actually get new technologies into a school system? So say the research is successful and it shows that the robot is incredibly valuable in reducing stress in teens. How does something like that get adopted in a school system? How do schools support mental health? How do schools adopt new technologies? Those are the kinds of questions that a research team may not necessarily have the time or the bandwidth or even the expertise to look at. Similarly, affordable fluoride removal for clean drinking water. This is something that's come out of our civil and environmental engineering department. So again, in terms of the technology development, the team knows what to do. They're developing the technology, but once they've done it, how does that happen? How does that actually get to the people who need it, right? Like, what business model would you use to try and make a low cost, affordable product available to people who need it? Similarly, the mobile app to translate pesticide safety information to Spanish. So this is incredibly useful for agricultural workers in the US, many of whom speak Spanish, but pesticide labels tend to be in English. So this research team has gone out there, worked very closely with the agricultural community to develop the app. But once it's developed, what next? It's not something that you would necessarily want or expect the workers to pay for. So how does this become a sustainable product so that can be widely adopted by many people? Communities That Care is research that's come out of our School of Social Work, and they help communities implement programs that reduce risky behavior in youth. How does this become broadly available? Once the research is done, you're not going to get funding for going into communities to implement these programs. So where does that funding come from, and how can they keep doing this to benefit communities? So that's really the problem that I was trying to solve. You know, what happens to research like this if the research is successful and it's done and then the research funding dries up? And that's why I looked at this entrepreneurship program, a fellowship program, to try and help answer some of these questions for researchers. I mentioned that the program was launched last year. So we had our first cohort of students last year. We had 3 students last year. This year we had 4 students. And what the students do is they spend 10 weeks over the summer. Each has responsibility for one project. And they do a deep dive into these projects to look at how these projects can have a sustainable pathway forward. So they don't do any of the research to develop the product. That's what the research teams does. They do things like conduct stakeholder interviews, try and figure out what is the ecosystem in which this innovation has to work. So for example, the social robot, the school system, who makes decisions in schools, who, in order to procure technology, what mental health support is available currently for students in school? How would this social robot, if it's successful, how would it fit with other things that are happening in school? They also look at markets, potential markets for the innovations that are being developed. They look at who the competitors might be. They try and figure out how have similar products or similar innovations become successful and sustainable. And what they really come up with at the end is this roadmap for the investigative team that will help the team in making decisions for how to make their research sustainable outside of the university environment or after the research funding dries up. You know, the goals of the program are really twofold. It's for both the students and for the researchers. I mean, I mentioned some of the things that the researchers get from this in terms of considered routes forward that they may not have otherwise thought about. The students really go through this program in a way that enables them to look at questions that the research team doesn't have the time to do or may not have the expertise to do. And it gives them a really objective and critical view of their innovations. These students go out and interview tens and dozens of people in the ecosystem that the innovation is going to work. And they get feedback on the innovation that a researcher may not, because they are kind of one step removed from the work, and people tend to be more honest with them about their feedback. For the students, the idea is really to get a multidisciplinary team of students working together on these projects and give them experience, this type of real world experience in analyzing an innovation and understanding how it can move forward. A lot of these students, they've never done something like this customer discovery exercise before, or developing a business plan before. So it's really intended to give them experience in that space. They do a lot of presentations associated with the work. They present every 2 weeks, and then they eventually come up with a final report and a final presentation for the investigators, as well as for other stakeholders. And what the students really value from this is that they're not working with other students from their own department. So the team tends to be very multidisciplinary. Last year we had students from the business school, our policy school, and our School of Social Work. And all of them said that it's very rare for them to be able to get to work closely with other students from other departments. I don't want to go through too many details about the program. I put it in the slide, but it's for 10 weeks over the summer. And, you know, we do offer the students a lot of training and mentorship, and importantly, we pay them. So we have a competitive process by which we select students. And we're actually going through that right now. We're just done with our interviews for this summer. And I think I just want to leave you with, you know, it seems like it's been really successful from last year. The investigators really liked what they got from the students. The students had an incredible experience with the program. We're trying to figure out, how do we scale this? It's not feasible to think about doing something like this with, you know, 15 students and 15 projects. So if we want to give 15 students the experience of doing something like this, how do we do it? And we've been thinking about potentially trying to turn this into a class, but that's kind of up in the air right now in terms of how we would scale it. There's more information on this website, and then of course, please also email me if you have any other questions, you know, after we finish with this session as well. But I think I will just end now and stop sharing my screen. And I just really like to hear thoughts from everybody, feedback, but also if you've done similar things at your institutions in terms of trying to figure out, you know, how do you get students involved in thinking about sustainability plans for society, for research that's societally beneficial. So I'd just like to open it up to everybody else for discussion now.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Meher. Thank you. This was very informative, and I like how you've given sort of not just the idea, but also the logistical details, because a lot of the times, if people are looking for inspiration, that's the information that people don't see on websites, and thank you for that. So I work at McGill University in the Faculty of Management, and we do have a fellowship program over here, which we started in a paid model, but then we ran it for a year and a half, and then last year we piloted a program that's for credit model, and now this year we're actually moving towards for credit as well. So this is for bachelor students though, not for graduate students. So that's a different thing. It's easier for us to incorporate credits in an undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
Actually, my colleague Anita Novak will be speaking tomorrow, I believe around 11 a.m. or something.
Okay.
So
I think I actually heard her talk today.
Was it today?
So she may be speaking. I did hear her talk about, it was Anita Novak, and she was from McGill. So I took down her email address, and I was definitely intending to contact her. Yeah, so that's great to hear that you've also been involved in this.
Yeah, so that's been a program. I've been there from the beginning of that. But one thing that I can say for example, for management students, usually they're very scared of, or they don't think sustainability applies to them. One thing that worked for me was to show them when we were marketing the program, we showed them the 17 sustainable development goals. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's this other diagram that has the three wheels that shows the economic, the social, and the ecological, how all the 17 goals are divided into these three categories.
Yeah.
And that was a very neat way of telling them that whatever your desired impact is as a manager, be it economic growth and innovation, be it social impact, be it ecological protection, you can create an impact using the Sustainable Development Goal framework.
Yeah.
So I think just converting that into their language was very helpful.
Yeah. That's I was the fellowship program that you had and then converted into a class. I know that Anita in her talk, she mentioned that they do have students be part of these research teams. Would they, I wasn't clear if they specifically look at developing business models for these innovations. It sounded like they could do a broad variety of things for the research team.
So there are two components. There's a faculty research project. So they work on a faculty research. It can the variety of topics on that, but simultaneously they start their own impact initiative, and that can range. That's like a blue sky thinking model over there, right? And maybe some teams are very capable and they can create their own project and they can develop business plans and all of that. But this year in our pilot program, all the teams actually came up with proper project management tools. You know, things that professionals are using. They created their
Yeah.
timelines. They created the whole roadmap and everything as well, because we provided them the tools to do that as well. So
Oh,
they do at least that element. And next year we're hoping that it will be more.
yeah. Oh,
Uh,
that sounds great. I'd love to connect further offline maybe
of
and
course,
talk a little bit more about what you've done.
sounds good.
It would be great to hear from other people as well if you've got kind of similar ideas or things that that at least try and achieve the same goal at your institutions.
I can say a little. I'm Megan Voorhees. I'm at the Institute in the Environment at the University of Minnesota, so also a big public research institution. And a couple of things that we're sort of playing around with. One is a fellowship program where it would be recruiting students across the university, so a couple of fellows in each college or school before admittance, so they would know that they'd be in a fellowship program for the whole, like say 2 years of their degree program, and working on sort of social innovation and entrepreneurship and connecting it to a project that they propose. So it'd be more student-led, but trying to create this space for a really interdisciplinary conversation and learning together around how to do that work. But I like your model. We play around a lot at our institute and how to support faculty to think about taking their research and
Mm-hmm.
implementing it. And so I love this idea of getting grad students to help with that. So thank you. I actually hadn't thought of that. So I'm like, how did we not think of this? So you just opened a window.
Yeah. Oh, that's
The other
great.
thing I'll just mention that we've started doing, I guess a year and a half ago, is once a week we have something called Impact Studios, and it's a place where students or faculty or honestly staff can come and get sort of individualized coaching around how to have social impact. And we just have volunteers to coach. Many of them are faculty on our campus who are just so inspired to, we do it on Fridays, to spend Fridays with people who care about having a social and environmental impact. But also a number of pretty incredible community leaders, you know, those folks that you drop their name and everyone in the state has heard of them.
Yeah.
Because they're just so interested in meeting with people who care enough to do something on sort of a volunteer basis. That's worked really well and has helped really build a community of people who are thinking about how to have an impact from a lot of different angles. So I then call on those coaches to help me think about the work I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So I will say it's been more popular with students. It's harder to get faculty to show up and have office hours with but we're starting to get there. We're getting a little traction. I guess that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And that's the role of mentors is really important, and that's something that we try to do over the summer for our students as well. So of course they have interaction with the project teams and they're working with the project teams, but we also try and have them meet mentors locally, to just see kind of people who meet with people who've done it and who've been able to be successful in getting out innovations that have societal impact, and the students really enjoy that as well. And it is amazing how mentors, volunteers are happy to come in and mentor students and share their experience in this space. That's something that's been really nice to see on our end.
Would you talk a little bit about how you've picked the research projects?
Yeah, so that's a lot of work. That's, it comes with this whole thing of, okay, if we scale it and we have to pick more than a few research projects. So part of it is just where I sit in the university. I'm very familiar with a lot of research that goes on. That's partly my role at the Population Health Initiative, is to really be aware of research that goes on. We have a funding program as well, where we have researchers apply for pilot funding for innovations, not just kind of, entrepreneur in the entrepreneurship space, but broadly. But many of those that I see, when I see them, I think, okay, I wonder if they thought of what comes next. And this could be a good one for a student to work on, to look at kind of from a social entrepreneurship lens. And then the other place that's really helpful in terms of finding project is our tech transfer office. So we have an incredibly active tech transfer office, and they don't only deal with innovations or technologies that have commercial value. They are pretty bought into this idea that the university should also be looking at innovations that have societal impact. So they touch a lot of researchers as well who come to them. And so I always confer with the tech transfer office. And I guess that's one thing I should really say about this program. It's by no means done in isolation just from our office. It was developed, it took about a year to develop. And part of the reason for that was to get the tech transfer office on board, to get our business school on board, and to get our policy school on board, because we had kind of bits of expertise in all of these places that needed to contribute in order for this to be successful. So those are all really key players in this program as well. It's not something that, at least at our institution, that we could have done on our own.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I think we only have about 3 minutes left. So I'd love to hear from anybody else.
Hi, it's Kevin. I love your program. It's amazing. And I'm going to contact you to learn more.
Great, please do.
Yeah, because it's a great idea. And it's something we could use what we're in my lab right now.
Oh, okay. Where are you and what do you do?
So I'm in Ottawa, Canada. I work at college. And so I take in cohorts of multidisciplinary students, and they do an open call for projects to social enterprise. And then they take on those projects and do them.
Oh, fantastic.
So over the summer, we have like 10 students, all from different programs. And we take on probably about 10 social enterprises, and they work in individual groups of teams of 3 or 2 and work for those social enterprises, really just building digital technology.
Okay.
So it's all demand driven from outside of the institution, but it's the same thing. We pay them a living wage, which is something I think more and more people need to do.
Yes.
Most of my students have 3 jobs now. So, and now I'm going to run, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Well, definitely get in touch afterwards. Nice to meet you.
Amazing program. Thanks.
Bye. Anybody else? There's just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes left. I see. Please jump in.
Hi, my name's Willie. I help to lead a nonprofit that's based in Seattle. So I also.
Oh, hi.
Hi. But yeah, I just wanted to share with everyone a little bit about what we've been doing over the last 15 years to try to make it easier to scale the kind of program that you're describing. So there's a few different elements to what we do, but the organization is called Om Prakash, and we have a network of social impact partner organizations all around the world, about 175 autonomous organizations in 40 countries. That's the first main piece. And then the second piece is we have this highly customizable online learning platform. So what we're able to do is partner with different universities and help them design their own programs. Sometimes there's a strong focus on social innovation per se. Sometimes it's more focused on public health or some other disciplinary or interdisciplinary program. But we're able to sort of provide the online learning environment, which then typically gets accredited by the university, and that gets coupled with our network of partners so students can connect with organizations and historically have traveled internationally to work with these partners. Now we're doing much more of the sort of online volunteering. But essentially we're trying to, for people who hear a presentation like this one and say, wow, that's such a cool program, how do I start without needing to start from scratch? We're in part trying to help answer that question. So I appreciated your presentation and just wanted to share that, and would be happy to follow up with anyone who's interested.
I think we're out of time.
Willie, you may want to, thank you, Meher. Willie, you may want to tell about the session tomorrow. So if people want to attend, they get a full view of what you're going to present.
That's a great point. So tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, I'm presenting along with Saleha and some other colleagues. I believe it's at 3:30 Eastern. 3:45 Eastern. And the title of our presentation is something like ethical approaches to community engagement across differences of culture and power. So a lot of what we think about, it's not just the technical piece of how do you develop curriculum and connect students with projects, but it's about the power dynamics and the cultural differences that are sort of at play in that type of interaction. So yeah, I would love to see any of you there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Meher, for this excellent session and this community conversation.
Thank you all for attending and making this virtual experience quite enjoyable.